Welcome to another React Uploaded tutorial. Today we're going to look at a more advanced topic of cropping images before they are uploaded to our server. We're going to build on top of a couple of concepts we've looked at previous tutorials. Links are in the bottom, of integrating into the upload process dynamically, and also how to show progress of the uploads. And we'll leverage these in today's tutorials as well. So we'll first take a look at how to do cropping of a single image just before it's uploaded, and then we'll do the more advanced part, the second part, which will show how to do this for multiple images. So basically a kind of a queue of images before they are uploaded. As always, all of the code will be available in the tutorials repo that I will also link at the bottom. For this tutorial, we'll use Uploady, of course, the upload button preview that we've seen before, RC progress that we also saw in the progress tutorial, and React Cropper, which will help us with the cropping itself. In the first tutorial, we'll see how we can crop just a single image before it's uploaded. As you can see here, I can select the file, crop the image, and then send it to be uploaded. In the next few minutes, we'll see just how easy it is to implement such a UI. We start by adding our upload button to select the file this time, not upload directly. And we use the upload preview, but this time we give it our own preview component. So this is the preview component prop that we use. And now we're going to define this component. And we do so with the request presend update HOC or HOC, higher order component, that gives us the ability to tap into the uploading process. And this is the update request and request data props that we see here. The ID and URL that we get as props as well are coming from the preview and not from the HOC. Okay, so we're going to define a few of the internal state variables that we want to use. For example, the isCropped and the cropped image we will use to show the image after it was cropped. And now we're going to render our basically cropping UI. So this time we're only focusing on a single image. We're going to add our cropper, which is the React Cropper. And we use some parameters and props to make it look and behave as we want it. You can do this and define whatever you wish. This is not Uploady specific. And we use the crop and callback to understand when crop is finished. And we set it to true in our internal state. We give it a ref, so we can also use the API to retrieve the cropped image from the cropper itself. Underneath the hood, React Cropper uses Cropper.js. And we have our preview image that we will use to show the cropped image, once it's cropped, of course. We add our style components, so nothing important here, just a little bit of CSS. Obviously, we import Cropper from React Cropper and add its own CSS, so it will look as it should. What I'm doing now is adding a button that, when clicked, will resume the upload process. It's important to remember the with request presend update higher order component is basically the componentized version of the request presend hook. It gives us a chance to tap into the upload process, halt the processing for a given request, make modifications to that request, and then resume it. And all of that from a React component. So from the cropper, we're going to get our cropped image using its API. And underneath the hood, it's using Canvas to create a blob that we will now set as the file to be sent to our server. So we're basically replacing midair the image that we are going to upload, and then we call update request. And calling update request actually resumes the upload. Very similar to how the pre-send request hook was used in the previous tutorial. And we also show a little bit of progress using again, RC progress, and we're going to make it look nice with a progress line. So for that, we define our own progress component that will get the ID from the item, and we'll be able to register for the progress event using one of uploaded hooks. In this case, we are going to use the use item progress listener hook, of course, and we give it an ID, so it will only be called, or rather only be invoked when we get progress for this specific item. We also have a fallback on the null state, because we're calling the hook on the first render when we're not necessarily going to have any kind of progress information yet. And now we finish by rendering our upload progress component, which is basically just a wrapper and the styled wrapper around the progress line component from RC progress. So we add some styling to that, as we've seen in the previous tutorial. Again, give it a few styles to make it look nice within our demo here, and we should be good to go. Oh, one last thing. We do want to make sure that we're getting the right type out of the image, and also making sure that we specify the file name and basically adding it to the blob, because it's not going to get it from the original file. And we want to save that information when we upload to the server. And now when we upload the file, we see it's uploading, and we can check our dummy server here, in this case, that we actually got the file name and also just the cropped image. For the second part of this tutorial, we're going to look at the more advanced use case of cropping multiple files before they are uploaded. We'll build on top of the first part, and as you can see, it will allow us to select files, crop any one of them that we wish, and then upload all of them together. And we'll also get to show a progress per file, and then for the entire batch. This will be the most advanced code-heavy tutorial that we've had to date. Let's jump back right into the code. We're going to see many of the concepts and components tied together now. Remember that Upload doesn't create the UI for you, and it doesn't try to replace existing UI component libraries out there. What it does best is give you the necessary building blocks and utils to build your own UI, however you choose to do it. A lot of the code we're going to look at now isn't Upload specific. It's mainly to show a nice looking QUI that you may want to use or build upon in your own application. We start by adding our Q container, which is just going to be a div with some styles. Once we've done that, we're going to have a state param for our batch ID, which is what we're going to use for our higher order component. We get the ID using the use batch add listener, so when files are selected. And we're also going to listen to the finalize event in order to reset the ID. Next, we're going to define our progress listener. So we will be able to listen to the progress events as they come in for the batch. We're just going to have our is in progress variable, so we can monitor that and pass that to our other components as well. And we're going to show a progress for the entire batch, as we've seen in the preview just a few minutes ago. We're going to have our selection button, so this will show the user the prompt to select files from the file system. Of course, you can use any other way to receive files, whether it's from drag and drop or from pasting. On that, there will be other tutorials. So we're going to wrap this with the with batch start update, very similar to the HOC that we used in the first tutorial. This time we are setting the HOC for the entire batch rather than just for a single request. We have our container styled component here, and we're going to also define a container for the previews. So as we will have multiple thumbnails, and we're going to use upload preview component. This time we are going to pass it a different custom preview component. And we will also use the preview component props, which is a way to pass along more information as props to our preview component that we define here. So this will be the item preview thumb component that we will now define. It's going to receive the ID and URL from the preview component itself. We're going to pass it a few more props as well, like the is cropped set or is finished and so on. We're going to make the thumbnail clickable when upload isn't taking place. So if it's the batch hasn't finished uploading, the item hasn't finished, or when it's not uploading at the moment. So we're going to define some styles for our thumbnail and preview. And we're going to wrap the image that will be shown for the thumbnail. And we're going to make sure that it's showing the right kind of styles that we want. For example, the pointer cursor when it's clickable. And we're going to show this kind of a circle, a dot on top of the image to indicate that the image was cropped. Now we are going to render the actual image. We use the URL that we got from the preview to set that as the image source. When it's clicked, we're going to report that back to our batch component, so we will be able to show the cropping UI for that specific image. The context here is making it possible for the user to choose which images to crop from the pending batch. Remember that the higher order component that we define with batch start update makes it possible for us to halt the upload process after files have been selected and also change it. And here we see that we get the update request and request data as we did in the previous tutorial, but this time for the entire batch rather than just the one request. We're going to save a state for which image is selected so we can show the cropping UI, as we will see in a minute or so. And we'll also store which items have finished uploading, again, for our UI purposes. We're also going to store the crop data so we can pass it along to the request, as we will also see in a moment. We want to store which item is selected. And we want to define which props we're going to pass along to the preview component. So we do this here, we do this with a method, and we use a callback to make sure that it's memoized. We're going to pass along information that the thumbnail requires. For example, what to do when the user clicks on it, whether it is cropped, so we can show our indication in the circle or dot, whether it's finished or not, and whether it's uploading currently. Again, we saw how it's going to be used in the component itself, and here we're making sure that all the information is passed to that component. we want to allow the user to actually upload the batch, so the images within the batch. We do this by adding our own custom button, and when it's clicked, this is the point where we will update the request data using the cropped information that we store in our state, and we will make sure that we either get the original item or the cropped image to replace the file property of the item. So here we are either using the blob or we are using the original file, depending on whether it was cropped or not. And we use the update request method to resume the upload. This is very similar, basically identical to what we've done in the previous tutorial. When there is an item selected and we're not currently uploading, so upload hasn't started, we want to show the cropping UI, so we want to show the cropper. We have our custom component for that. And we also want to make sure that when the cropping data is ready, we store it into our state, and then we use it during the just before resuming the upload. We're going to add the information to our cropped state parameter. And we want to make sure that when an item is finalized, we know about it, and we can also indicate that it's finished. So we use the item finalized event listener hook. This will give us the information at the right time. Now going to show the cropper itself. So this is the component we will use, the cropper from multi-crop. Again, we're using React Cropper as we saw in the previous tutorial. And we're just going to wrap that with the container, some styles. We're going to use the component that I created called upload cropper. It's basically the same cropper that we saw earlier, only with the API tucked in, just to make it easier to use and reuse in different tutorials. So it's the same code that we saw earlier, just wrapped in another file. And we just need to give it some information and also receive a cropping ref, which will be our little API just for cropping. So setting the crop and unsetting it. And we're going to add some buttons to allow the user to save the crop that they want to use or unset it if they want to basically revert the crop and return to the previous original image. So the ref we pass along will give us access to the crop and uncrop methods. So we can call crop image, and crop image will do the same thing. It will create the blob and return that once it's finished, once it's ready. And this will, when the crop is saved, it will go back up to the batch, and we will be able to use that when we are uploading. And we can also unset it, so we can revert it back to the original image. So using the remove crop. Again, this is just cropper.js API, not uploading specific. Okay, so before I forget, we do want to make sure, like we did before, that we save the name from the original file and use it with our blob. So in that case, we want to pass it properly into the cropper. So almost forgot to do that. So we'll do that now. And we should be good to go. Select our files. We see thumbnails for the different files we selected. We can crop one of them, and we see the circle indicating we cropped. We can crop another one. Once we're ready, we click Upload All, and the images will upload one by one. We can see the progress indicator for each one, and then the one for the entire batch. And if we check the requests, we can see the file name. We can see that only the selection of the cropping was used in the right image. For the one we didn't crop, we get the entire image. And for another cropped image, we will just get the area that we selected. All right, as promised, this was a code-heavy tutorial compared to previous ones. However, I do hope it managed to show that it doesn't require too much code to get a very nice looking and advanced uploading UI, and this time even with multiple image cropping. Remember, all of the code is available in the linked repo. Please do make sure to subscribe to this channel and let me know in the comments if this is helpful and what you'd like to see in the future. Don't forget, give Uploady a star on GitHub. Now, go code.